When talking about great dynasties that ruled a diverse and dynamic subcontinent and managed to unify it under one flag, one cannot simply overlook the Mughal Empire. One of the main reasons that enabled the Mughals to rule for centuries was their tolerance. Though one can possibly argue about Aurangzeb, but that will be the story for another video. You're watching Royal Mughals, and without wasting any more time, let's just get on with the video. The Mughals started their rule with Babur's victory in the Battle of Panipat in 1526. The subcontinent basically had a Hindu majority population. The Mughals, being the followers of Islam, had to acknowledge this fact if they wished to have their roots flourished in Hindustan. Akbar the Great understood this, and this is precisely evident from his administration and mandates. In this video, we'll be talking about the emergence of Din-e-Ilahi and how basically it shaped the Mughal administration way back in the 15th, 16th century. Akbar was born in the fort of a Hindu Raja in Amarkot during Humayun's exile and was already an Indian by birth. He had to make sure the same for his dynasty. What made Akbar great was his desire to think and to do what was right in itself, something he would conclude after much debate and introspection, judging impartially and accepting views without prejudice. No doubt, Akbar was a practicing Muslim and true follower of the religion of his forefathers, but he was born with an inquiring mind, taking nothing for granted. Such was his sense of inquiry that Badauni, an orthodox Muslim who strongly resented Akbar's administration, wrote in the words, "His Majesty has passed through the most various phases and though all sorts of religious practices and sectarian beliefs, and has collected everything which people can find in book, with talent of selection peculiar to him and a spirit of inquiry opposed to every Islamic principle." Akbar proposed that all religions are either equally true or equally illusory. In support of this claim, Akbar wanted to develop an accepted code of ethical and legal behavior, and in his search for the spiritual truth, he got himself involved in the customs and practices of different gods. He chanted mantras, prayed to the sun, kept fast, and worshipped fire. So the Din-e-Ilahi, or the divine faith, was a syncretic religion propounded by the Mughal Emperor Akbar in 1582, intending to merge some of the elements of the religions of his empire and thereby reconcile the differences that divided his subjects. Before we proceed, I need to make sure that you know that Din-e-Ilahi is not a new religion. It was the amalgamation of different components of different religions and making it something different altogether. The elements were primarily drawn from Islam and Hinduism, and some others were also taken from Christianity, Jainism, and Zoroastrianism. The Sufi creed of the Din-e-Ilahi was promoted in the beginning of the year 1582. According to the writings of Jesuit writer Baratoli, a formal council was established for its promotion, and an old sheikh, possibly Sheikh Mubarak, was sent to promote it. Historian Vincent A. Smith says that the principles of Din-e-Ilahi were not precisely defined as late as till 1587 because it was not a new religion. It was an amalgamation of different components of different religions, borrowing mostly from Islam and Hinduism. The fundamentals of the Din-e-Ilahi was stated by Mohsin Fani, who has described a part of it in his famous Dabistan-e-Mazahib, or School of Religions, which is a Persian language work that examines and compares South Asian religions and sects of the mid-17th century. The account did not directly discuss the Din-e-Ilahi, but has indirectly expressed inner principles of the system. Mohsin Fani represented Akbar at the end of a general debate of religions and presented 10 virtues of the Din-e-Ilahi before the champion of different faiths. These are: number 1, liberality and beneficence; number 2, forgiveness of the evildoer and repulsion of anger and mildness; number 3, abstinence from worldly desires; number 4, care of freedom from the bonds of the worldly existence and violence, as well as accumulating precious stores for the future real and perpetual world; number 5, wisdom and devotion in the frequent meditation of the consensus of action; number 6, strength of dexterous prudence in the desire of marvelous action. Number 7. Soft voice, gentle words, pleasing speeches for everybody. Number 8. Good treatment with brethren, so that their will may have the precedence to our own. Number 9. A perfect alienation from creatures and a perfect attachment to the Supreme Being. Number 10. Dedication of soul in the love of God and union with God, the preserver of all. We are aware that Akbar was illiterate, but his level of profundity and an inquiring mind completely overshadows his shortcomings. In every religion, the formalities or the form of worshipping is given as much importance as the object of worship. The difference amongst great religious systems is based not on any difference in the object of the worship, but it is almost everywhere the same. The real difference lies in the form of worship. Deen-e-Ilahi's ideals state that the war is on the path, not on the destination. Now let's talk about the involvement of priests in Deen. In the Deen-e-Ilahi, there was no priesthood. Scholar of the Persian language, Heinrich Blockmann states that Akbar solely relied upon his influence and example, and thus had established the priesthood and appointed no proper persons to propagate his faith. This is, however, can be seen as reasonable because the Deen was never regarded by Akbar as a new religion, and therefore there was no need of a separate priesthood and separate church. Though everyone who entered into the new order were not motivated by a religious conviction, most of them joined to attain royal favor. Akbar tried hard to remove any pressure and free will was granted. This can be supported with V.S. Smith's statement where Akbar himself said, "Why should I claim to guide man before I myself am guided?" He issued a general order to all state officials and mansabdars to look after the spiritual development of his subjects. Now moving ahead to the screening process. The screening of the intending entrance to the Deen-e-Ilahi was tested by the entrant's readiness to sacrifice property, life, religion, and honor. It was not that each of the entrants would be in a position to sacrifice all those 4 items all at one time. Some might sacrifice 1 and some 2 and so on. Thus, the stage of the entrant was styled in a nomenclature peculiar to the order and was called degree. They were stated to have obtained 1 degree, 2 degree, according as they were in a position to offer 1 or more of those precious items. These 4 degrees were defined as oath of fealty in 1579 when the Deen-e-Ilahi was not even thought of. When the Deen was promoted, they were included in the preliminaries. What makes Deen-e-Ilahi so special and exotic is the thought process and the idea behind it. The measures adopted by Akbar for the propagation of the Deen were much in advance of time. In those days, religious violence and persecution had become quite common. Europe was all set to experience the drama of contest between the Roman Catholics and the Protestants, while the Jesus Brotherhood suffered from murders and conspiracies in the name of Jesus. In the Islamic world, the Sunni-Shia conflict had reached a new level of hatred, divided between the Safavid state of Persia and its Sunni rival neighbor states. In the midst of those terrible traditions and unholy environments, it required no small amount of courage of conviction and length of liberalism for Akbar to say that religion ought to be established by choice and not by violence. Abdul Fazl said that the emperor did not insist on conversion into his order, even for those who used to acknowledge to have received the spiritual power from the throne of His Majesty. They stood in need of no conversion, though they were intimately connected with the circle of Akbar. Now let's talk about some of the practices of the Deen-e-Ilahi. The practices of the Deen were actually well defined. These were: number 1, not to feast after death. Number 2, to avoid flesh as far as possible. Number 3, did not take anything slain by one's own self. Number 4, not to eat with butchers, fishes and birds. Number 5, not to cohabit with pregnant, old and barren women, nor with women under the age of puberty. A disciple could be burned or buried according to his own religious practices. Akbar lamented that the dead body of Birbal had not been brought to his capital so that it could be burned. The members of the Deen-e-Ilahi may be divided into 2 groups. The first group included those who accepted the creed in all its aspects, internal as well as external form. The second group included those who accepted the shast only. The word shast literally means anything round, either a ring or a bow. The shape of the symbol was like that of a ring, which may fairly be called a swastika. It was wrapped in clothes studded with jewels and was worn on the top of the turban. It was their symbol of brotherhood. Now it's time to talk about the role of Ibadat Khana in the development of the Deen. The principles of the Deen-e-Ilahi, according to many, were thrashed out of the fire in the discussion of the Ibadat Khana. The Sufi brothers and the father Mubarak, Faizi Sirhindi, Abdul Fazl, Tajuddin, by the light of their intellect, had served as torch-bearers in the midst of the darkness of doubts. Constant associations with the saints of other creeds had proved to Akbar that God might be perceived even by the saints of other religions. Akbar's birth in a Hindu house, his early association with the Persians, his own impressionable mind, his Central Asian heritage, the liberal spirit of the age, the forces of Renaissance, the Mahdi movement, and the influence of the contemporary Sufis and Saints had molded his mind. He became more liberal in his attitude. Thus, like an orthodox Islamic Sufi, Akbar believed in the unity of God. Like a Hindu, he felt the universal presence of the deity. To him, the symbol of fire and sun represented the supreme being in the letter of creation, in the vast expanse of nature, while the Jain principles of harmlessness of animal life had almost made him a royal bhikshu. The Persian etiquettes and manners formed the formula of day-to-day living of a true follower of the Deen-e-Ilahi. At the end of the day, it comes all down to universal tolerance. So it was all about the Deen-e-Ilahi. It was not a religion, but it was of course more than an order. Well, if you liked the video, make sure to hit the subscribe button and like and share the video. We'll be bringing out such interesting topics about the history of the subcontinent, focusing on the Mughal period as well as periods preceding and succeeding the Mughal ones. Thank you for watching.